What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Hot Takes. I'm back. Last week I took the week off because I wanted to do some notes because this is going to be my first solo stream, which is going to be really weird. I don't really expect anyone to show up, but I'm going to do this anyway because I really want to talk about this topic just by myself because I wrote down notes, believe it or not. That's why I delayed the stream by a whole week. And there's a lot of drama surrounding DC. There always is. So I'm also going to be talking about that. Let me just make sure I have the chat open. And regardless of who stops by, I'm still going to just talk my mind and say whatever I want. I'm only going to do this for an hour, maybe 40 minutes. I'm not going to run long. And whoever pops up in the chat, I'll also address them and some of their concerns. So, to get into it, this stream is going to be about James Gunn's new DCU chapter slate one. We don't know all of the projects in this slate. Uh, Hello, loser, as well. So we got Aaron World Order here. But yeah, I was just saying that this whole topic is just going to be about James Gunn, DCU, his new projects, what I would want to see, what I don't want to see, and some ideas. So I'm going to be talking about like in depth what I want to see. But before I go into the projects, I kind of want to talk about the slate and the logic behind it, because I know a lot of people want the DCU to be almost like Marvel, but with DC characters. And to be honest, I really don't want that. I think that's kind of lame. It's not interesting. Um, what's up? What's up? That's a new face, one of a kind ASMR. So nice. Oh, you're from okay, Tall Green from the Georgia chat. That's cool. So yeah, I was just saying that for the DC slate, I really don't want it to be like Marvel at all. Okay, that's one of my big concerns is that Marvel has done their own thing. They've shaped their own universe, their phases, if you will, and I don't think DC should copy that. I think DC should take a hard opposite of what Marvel does, right? Not on everything, but with especially the slate, right? Like I like the idea of doing chapters because it feels like a book, right? That there's stories to be told that all connect, right? And obviously, I mean, the phases are very similar, right? But I think based on what DC wants to do, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's standalone. What's up, George? And so that's kind of what I want to see. I mean, the slate, the chapter one is called Monsters and Gods, right? So I'm expecting it to be. I mean, the title is kind of like a play on heroes and villains, and we're obviously going to see gods and we're going to see monsters. So I think it is clever, maybe too on the nose, but I don't really care. I think it's kind of cool. It's a little bit different from Marvel. Marvel doesn't really name their phases, if you will. So I'm going to play off of that the title and the projects that I want to see. So you're going to see villains, you're going to see monsters, and you're going to see gods as well. The only gods that I should probably state that I don't want to see in this first chapter is the new gods. I love Mr. Miracle and Big Barbara and all these characters, right? But I think it's just too early to introduce them. I can see them in chapter two. And to be honest, I really don't want to see Darkseid as the main villain. I think Darkseid is too similar to Thanos. Yes, he was created before Thanos, but still, right? I don't want to see again just Marvel doing the same thing or DC doing the same thing as Marvel, I should say. So that's kind of the beginning, if you will, of how I want to see this. You are a god. You are a god, right? So yeah. So also another thing that I want to get into is I also think there should be mini stories. Marvel really doesn't do this. Marvel just sort of has everything connecting, but I feel like there should be stories that only as I wrote down in my notes, I call them like sections, right? So like you have um Superman and Supergirl are going to connect and they could possibly tell an overarching story that only happens within the Superman family, right? Same thing with the Bat family. What's up, Arkham? I'm going to be talking about Suicide Squad at the end of this whole stream, so because I also have some things to say, and it's DC related. So yeah. Um, what else do we have here? Oh, give me a second. All right, sorry about that. Didn't want to do that, but something was going on. So I'm back. But anyway, as I was saying, different pockets, right? You have the Bat family, you have the Superman family, and they have their own stories that don't really connect to everything else. I just think it would kind of make sense. It would be a little bit different to what Marvel does. And also, too, I feel like with the new DCU, we're going to get spin offs, right? And I did put some spin offs that I want to see from each character, right? Um, so there's going to be that. And also, too, I think Marvel kind of does this, but they really don't. I think they should lean into this a little bit more, which is to have you have the cosmic side, you have like the grounded side, and then you have like the mystical side. I think it just separates things so then you can understand certain characters and how they all connect, right? Like Superman could be cosmic, but he also could be grounded. It just sort of depends on the tone that they go for. Batman obviously would be grounded. Waller and Peacemaker, the Authority, all of that could be again grounded. So I like that the first chapter is combining of big names and lesser known characters. Yeah, which is there's some ideas that I do have for that because I want to see lesser known characters, even if they don't get a trilogy. I don't think every character needs a trilogy, right? Like they could easily just have a one and done movie that's like a high concept and introduces them, and they're either on the Justice League or they're on the Justice League Dark or they're on another team, right? So that's kind of what I'm going to do here. So the projects that I had just to like we'll go over the announced ones and the ones that I would want to see. Like these are just like ones I came up with for fun. So we obviously have Superman Legacy, The Authority, Brave and the Bolds, Swamp Thing, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. So those are the movies that we know of as of right now. And then the TV shows we have Lanterns, Paradise Lost, Waller, Booster Gold, uh, Creature Commando, and then obviously Peacemaker season 2, which wasn't really announced. So uh, yeah, I guess Booster Gold could be grounded. Sorry, not Booster Gold. Blue Beetle. Um, I kind of want to see Blue Beetle team up with Booster Gold, but we are getting Jamie instead of Ted Cord as Blue Beetle. So I did factor that into my notes because I think it would kind of make sense for Blue Beetle to appear in the Booster Gold TV show, right? Um, so as for the shows that I want to see or the movies and shows that I want to see, I definitely want to see a Wonder Woman movie that takes place more dealing or setting up the War of the Gods storyline because that was kind of cool, right? Where all the superheroes were fighting all the various gods, right? Like real life gods. I also have a possible sequel to The Flash, which would be like The Flash of Two Worlds, which would introduce Jay Garrick. I think, having Jay Garrett and the Flash family is going to tie into a lot of the rest of the movies, right? Like, we want to see the Superman family, we want to see the Bat family, Wonder Woman, right? Introducing a lot of those characters. I'm going to get into Nightwing because I don't want a movie, but you'll see what I do here. So yeah, and then obviously a sequel to Suicide Squad, which would be called Suicide Squad Checkmate, where it's basically going to be the Suicide Squad versus Checkmate because I believe possibly Waller will set up Checkmate and kind of just explaining the team and the different rankings and all that stuff. So I would kind of want to see something like that where it's an agency war and Amanda Waller's kind of in the middle of it. I think it would be really interesting, really cool. What's up, Degrassi? I don't think there's going to be too much that anyone would consider grounded. Yeah, I mean, I agree, yes, but like when I mean grounded, I'm more so like the Suicide Squad, Waller, like the agency stuff, Batman. So I just kind of coined it grounded because I mean, it's dealing with the government and stuff like that, right? So that's why I call it grounded. But I see what you mean there. Um, and then what else do I have? I also have the Justice League. This is going to be controversial, but I think the Justice League movie is going to be like sort of loosely inspired by Kingdom Come. And I only say that because the Authority are kind of similar to the characters in Kingdom Come, the storyline, right? Of being these new heroes that don't want to play by the rules. They don't really have morals. They're willing to kill people, which is essentially the Authorities, right? The Authorities, they obviously have an analog in DC, right? The Elite. And I almost called it like Justice League Elite, which I know was a comic where, it was like the Justice League merged with the Elite. So but I thought Justice League Kingdom Come, that has like some name cachet, and I think people would be like, "Oh, snap, they're actually gonna do something uh sort of big, but not really." Like this is only loosely inspired, right? Definitely gonna lean into the manic thrill of the weird, yes. Which I definitely have a lot of weird. Um so and that comes in with the TV shows. So the TV shows that I want to see um, are Animal Man. I really love Animal Man. He's a character that I think should just be on the Justice League, right? But I want it to be like the Grant Morrison mix with Jeff Lemire's run, where it's like body horror, but it's also very meta. It's like really weird and out there. In that one issue I remember of Grant Morrison where it's kind of like a play on Looney Tunes. So he goes into this cartoon as it's just weird and really bizarre. So like I kind of want to see that in a show, right? The next thing that I want to see is this isn't a team per se, but it is setting up a team. And the idea that I had was it's an anthology series, so it's kind of like Black Mirror or Tales of the Crypts or um Death or what's that show with David Fincher, Love, Death, Robot. So it's kind of like that where it's like different. It can be live action animation, but it's only about the dark horror side, right? And so it's called The House of Mysteries, which was a comic series, right? Anthology for DC. And so this is just going to follow like Constantine, and he's like setting up the Justice League Dark, I should say. Um what we got here. So I'm going to kind of see all the kind of weird obscure characters getting the spotlight from Gunn. Yes. That's what I want to see. I want to see obscure characters as well. And also too, I want to see this is another character. Again, this is like a throwaway character that I would really want to see because they said that they wanted to make a movie, but nothing happened, which is Hourman. I think Hourman could be like Limitless, but as a superhero movie. I think it would be really cool. Like again, he doesn't need a trilogy, just like he could just be on the Justice League or even on the back end side of the Justice League, right? I would want to see a Strange Adventures as well. I think that would be interesting, sort of like a standalone series. Yeah, animation would be also kind of interesting. It makes me wonder though if they would just adapt the Tom King series because that was very I mean it's Tom King. Tom King likes to break down the characters and explore them a little bit. So and that was dealing with sort of the decisions that I'm totally blanking on the character's name, but um he had to make in that comic, right? So yeah, I would definitely want to see something like that. There's a lot of things, of course, that I want to see, right? But just for the sake of this chapter one slate, I kind of want it to be about the Justice League versing the Authority and establishing the Justice League as more of the moral compass in the world, right? And I'll get into that. But the other series that I did create were I want to see a Nightwing series, as Arkham was mentioning, right? Um, Instead of a movie, I would want to see a series just because I think Nightwing is a character that you can kind of explore with various characters, right? And I kind of want to see, especially a first season that establishes kind of Red Hood. Like, I think going into Brave and the Bold, I don't want to see everybody established just yet. Like, I want Jason Todd to be dead, but at the ending of the movie, you're kind of setting up, okay, he's coming back as Red Hood, right? Like just because I feel like it would add a lot more stories to tell in the future where instead of just having everybody established immediately, it's kind of just lame. Like I would want to see Under the Red Hood as a story in a movie or a series, right? And I would honestly give that to Nightwing, right? Just to see his dynamic with Jason and how, Jason kind of envies him and hates him a little bit, right? Because he's the first Robin, he got all the attention, while Jason was kind of like this, troubled kid. So what do we got here? So Tom King was working on that series, yeah, and it was based on his run. Yeah, that would be It would definitely be an interesting series, and the Metal Men, I know that's yeah, I heard that's still happening, so that would be cool, and also, thanks for, yeah, smash the like button and subscribe. I usually don't say that just because I'm starting off, but yeah. So I'll talk about some villains. Right now, we'll do some basic villains, but anyway, so going into the projects again, there's gonna be lots of notes I have here, for Superman Legacy. Superman Legacy is something I'm worried, but I'm also excited because there's so much potential with Superman. And right now, the premise that they have, the log line of, Superman is the traditional Superman, but he's in a world that is jaded and cynical, I think is a great idea. That's what I've been saying for so long is to have Superman still be Superman, but you put him in a world where now his morals are conflicted with everybody else, right? It's sort of like Winter Soldier, right? Where Captain America is coming into the world and seeing, oh my God, it's so dramatically different that, you know, what I thought about the government and what they stand for, that's all erased. It's all gone. So, a lot of people like to say, oh, you can't do a Superman movie. Superman is too Boy Scout. He's too this and that. I don't think that's true. You need a good writer who can understand compelling conflict. You keep the character the same, and you don't do none of this nonsense where, oh, we have to reinvent the character to modernize him. No, you don't need to. You modernize the rest of the world, and that conflicts or contrasts with the character and who he actually is. The Challenges of the Unknown, yes, I have heard of them. I was also thinking like Legion to what was another group? The Omega Men. What's up, Max? Um so there's a lot of characters, obscure characters that I definitely want to see. Yeah, there's a lot of Batman villains, of course. But for the Superman idea, I definitely want it to be like a mix of all the Superman that have came before, right? The bombastic action of Man of Steel, but not too bombastic, nothing crazy, insane, but good action. I want to see Reeves and in there a little bit. So my whole idea is again kind of a stat. I don't want to say I want this movie to be political, but I kind of wanted to deal with the international relationship and how different countries view Superman because he's American, but he's also flying around the world. And so I kind of have this idea where, again, playing into Clark and Lois and working for the Daily Planet, they actually find out about this alien refugees that actually turns out to be a refugee from World War oh my god, I can't even say, but I can't even say the planet's name. But the planet that Mongol is from, right? Mongol is a character that James Gunn has kind of hinted or used, right? We got Mongal in Suicide Squad, so I think it would be interesting to start off as him as a villain, right? And kind of establish he's coming to Earth, but it's under a different guise. It's not like an alien invasion. It's more like District 9, right? Where it's like, hey, these aliens are seeking refugees, but yet they're run by a dictatorship and how, oh, this dictatorship wants to take over the Earth. And I think it would be an interesting idea where now Superman is kind of has to defend them, but he kind of has to not. And because of the dictator and Mongol and their conflict. And I just think you have to start a Superman movie where it establishes him as sort of he's conflicted with his morals, right? With what the world sees, what he wants to see. So yeah, but here we got Degrassi saying Andy Muschietti had pitched a Legion movie, which I think he could do. I'm very intrigued to see what if he's gonna stay around. I would want him to stay around. I don't know if I would want him to stay around to do a Flash too, but yeah, I meant War World, which is a tongue twister for me. I apologize. I do not know why, but yeah. So yeah, I'm also thinking that the one idea they could take from All Star Superman, but I'm a little bit skeptical about this, is I kind of want them to hint at the whole overexposure to the sun plot, right? Where it's like, oh, he's dying because of our son, right? And have Superman almost be like, I'm not dying anytime soon, but like I want my legacy to impact the rest of the world, right? And so this whole trilogy is about him trying to, you know, bring world peace, trying to stop wars and stuff like that, and that's why I say I kind of want it to be a little bit political in that sense. I also think it would be cool if Lex Luthor shows up, not as a villain, but like as a established character in this world. I also think Supergirl should show up as well. Have a bunch of cameos, not in the sense where, oh my god, we're gonna focus on this character, but establish these characters exist in the universe, and they're sort of like, oh, here they are, and now we move on, right? Um, I also think at the ending of the movie, it would be really actually a good idea to just introduce the Authority, right? And sort of like they just show up, and it's like, whoa, what the hell's going on, right? And I don't know, they kill some of the aliens, and that's not what Superman wants, right? Yeah, you can have Lex become president. That could also be a storyline that is set up. I think that would actually work really well. I think there's a lot of social commentary, and I'm sure, we could just say this here. They're gonna make Lex Luthor like Jeff Bezos. Okay. I wouldn't mind that. I don't know if he's starting to get old up there, right? But John Travolta is still a good actor. So I wouldn't mind seeing it. I know he's got the bald look going on right now, but I mean he's a good actor. Yeah, I mean, I want Mongol to not just be alien invasion. It should be like he's come. It's almost like he's coming under false pretenses, right? He's kind of tricking people, and that's where the moral conflict comes in, right? Because the people that are actually wanting to come to Earth, the aliens, alien refugees, in my idea, they are like, "Oh my god," right? Like he's a dictator and we have nowhere else to go, right? And meanwhile his plans are, no, I just want to take over Earth and make it into this coliseum where everybody fights, right? So I think that'd be really cool. Robert Downey Jr., I mean, as Lex Luthor, it would be cool. I know he was in the running to be Lex Luthor in Superman Returns, so I don't know about now, right? Just because he's been Iron Man and such. But moving on from my Superman idea, the Authority, I want it straight and simple. It's kind of like Super meets Inglorious Bastards, very sort of dark, but yet the characters are not they're not sadistic as like the characters in The Boys, right? I know a lot of people like to make the comparison, oh, The Boys or the Authority is kind of like The Boys, right? They're uh the anti-Justice League, right? Or but they're not really parodies of the Justice League. That's the thing that people have to understand, and that's what The Boy does. It's a parody of the Justice League. So I kind of want it just to be a straight kind of like we're gonna take from the first arc, right, which was a circle arc. And it was a very simple story, right? This other country, and I'm totally blank. The Gamora character, right? He's the villain, and he has his family lineage, and he has his company, right? And they're obviously trying to, I don't know what it was. It was like they're trying to make this circle, right? Destroy these different cities to make this circle to whatever it was, right? I'm totally blanking on their whole motivation. It was very vague. I mean, it's kind of not the best storyline, I will admit, but I think it's a good storyline just to introduce the characters. Yeah, Kismora or whatever. Yeah, I'm terrible at the pronunciation, so but yeah, I just I don't really want to focus so much on the villain. I'd rather have a throwaway villain here that establishes that they're willing to do whatever it takes. Um, as for the team, Jenny Sparks, Jack, Hawksmoor, Apollo, Midnighter, Engineer, and the Doctor. But there's one character I don't want to see, and that is Swift. I think Swift should be introduced later on a little bit. I just think it's a little bit crowded for a movie. I think 6 works, 7 a little bit too much. I think you can introduce Swift in the Justice League movie if they do the conflict between the two characters or the two teams, I should say. Um, also, again, I kind of want to see a Superman cameo here. And I only say that because there's a lot of destruction in that first arc, right? A lot of people die. And since this now takes place in the DC universe, at least the movies, right? It would kind of make sense that a character like Superman would show up and say, hey, what the heck's going on? You guys are allowing people to die and such. So, yeah, the authorities, it could be controversial. It could also just be kind of very Zack Snydery. Um, I'm like I said, I kind of want it to be dark, but not too dark. Dark in the sense where these characters are making decisions that you're like, oh my god, that's fucked up, but the characters aren't fucked up, right? I mean, Midnighter's kind of fucked up, but you understand my point, right? Um, so what else do we have here? So yeah, as I was saying, Superman shows up, cameo, a little bit of a cameo. Yes, as I know, James Gunn has mentioned this, so it would make sense. And also just contrasts the characters, sets up their conflict, and yeah. Now I'm sure there's gonna be Authority sequel, and you could possibly do, the whole Jenny Sparks getting reincarnated and all of that jazz. So, I'm not gonna focus too much on a sequel. I'm only focusing on chapter one. So this movie's really setting up the conflict between the Justice League and the Authority. That's what I want to see, right? And that would lead into the first Justice League movie. Um yeah, I still haven't gotten to Miller's Run. I know we were one time talking about the Americans, right? Which I mean, I guess you could maybe put them sometime down the road for some of these characters. I'm just sort of again, I would have to get to Miller's Run on that. Also, too, I was even thinking, I'm like, would the authorities just sort of be established, or would you have the Wildstorm sort of already existing? Right? Oh, okay. This is interesting. So the authorities is where all the geopolitical stuff goes down. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely again the geopolitical aspect of the DC universe. I feel like needs to be in play, because uh just to before I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I don't want the Justice League to be the Avengers. I want them to be almost like the UN, but they're superheroes. That's how I would pitch the Justice League. Is they are very analytical and tactical, but they're also superheroes, right? Well, the Avengers, I feel like they're more warriors, they're more sort of military. Not to say that they are, but that's how I kind of see them in the MCU, right? Like they're under shield, and they kind of follow their orders or whatever it may be, right? At least in the first two movies, right? Or well, the second movie, Shield was kind of disbanded, but again, you get my point. Um, so the next movie, again, Brave and the Bold. This movie, again, I feel like is going to take heavy inspiration from that first arc in Grant Morrison's run, right? Batman and Son, just sort of establishing their relationship, Bruce and um, Damian. I know Degrassi, speaking of this movie, Degrassi and me always, I feel like it would have been Dick Grayson. I still think it could be Dick Grayson, but I think it makes sense to just establish the DCU Bruce Wayne and then maybe lead into Dick Grayson, which is why I think it's better to have a Nightwing series so people are more familiar with the character. So when he gets to be Batman, it's not this big shock and controversy, right? Yes, yes. I'm a little bit confused on that comic because it feels like an Elseworld story, especially the way Superman looks, where he's older, and some of the you know how the comic begins. I haven't delved too much into it, but yeah, I'm sure James Gunn is also going to take some inspiration from that comic too, since that's also a fairly recent comic. Um, but as for Batman, doing the Batman and Son story arc, it makes sense, right? You have the League of Assassins as the villain. I know that's super lame, right? There's so many Batman villains, but I feel like the League of Assassins, even though they were in the Dark Knight trilogy, I kind of want to see them again. And done in more of a comic booky weird sense, right? Um, and also too, I think Man Bat, just like in the comic, could be in this. So it's sort of like similar to what we've been getting a lot, right? There was an animated movie. I didn't watch that, but that dealt with the League of Assassins and Man Bat, and then you had Gotham Knights do something very similar. So I guess it kind of makes sense to bring on the screen, the silver screen. Um, what else do we have here? In my notes, I'm just looking at my notes. So yeah, I was saying before the Bat Family. I think the Bat Family should exist, but it's not complete, right? Jason Todd is still dead as of this movie. Barbara is recovering. She's Oracle. I think that makes sense. I know that's a controversial thing, right? But I do like Barbara as Oracle, and I think it is inspiring a little bit that she is disabled but still pull through. I think eventually she could recover and become Batgirl. I think you can kind of make a story like that. Deathstroke is a character I was trying to think of and how he factored into it because I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind him in the Suicide Squad movie like he was originally. But then I was like, I'm not too sure on that because the way that I have the Suicide Squad movie is that it's Peacemaker Suicide Squad versus Checkmate, right? And I didn't even really think besides of Mr. Terrific, um, because of how it's ranking, right? You have kings and queens and bishops and stuff. I only thought of Mr. Terrific as a bishop. And I was like, well, that makes sense. He was a bishop in the comic, right? So, um, but yeah, that we'll get to that point because I have a lot to say about Suicide Squad. But for Degrassi, incredibly integrated part of Damien's origin is that he doesn't get to be Robin until Dick. Yeah, that is a good point. That is a good point. However, I think, I mean, in this movie, he could kind of be like Robin, not Robin just yet. And like I said, I would have Jason Todd still be dead. And I would also say Tim Drake isn't Robin at this time. He was Robin for a short little bit, but he quit. So now Batman is sort of working alone, right? And his whole character arc would be again sort of establishing the father relationship of not only just between him and Damien, but him and Dick. Because I think again, people don't realize that Batman is a father figure, and we've seen so little of that that it kind of makes sense to show that as an arc, right? So I get what you're saying, Degrassi. It makes perfect sense. I mean, that's how it was. But I think for the movie and for his character arc that I would want to see, again, these are just my ideas. You could disagree, you could agree, blah blah blah. But I would want to see that arc for that character, right? Um, but yeah, this movie I feel like is going to set up a lot of the Bat family dynamic and their villains and such. I like I don't think this movie should show Joker and Clayface and Two Face and all these characters in Arkham Asylum. Just let it be about the relationships, even his relationship with Talia al Ghul, right? And then I had it here where you can have in the post credit scene Jason Todd being revived by the League of Assassins, and you could set up that whole storyline, right? And then obviously that could either play into a Nightwing series or it could play into the sequel, whatever you will, right? And also too, just like to establish an aesthetic for the Batman movies to keep it different from the Reeves movies, I would kind of make it like a James Bond movie, right? Where it's like different adventures, different the title itself doesn't really say Batman. Maybe it could, maybe it doesn't, but it's kind of here it's called, the Brave and the Bold, right? So the next one should sort of play on that idea, right? And I also think James Bond Batman is kind of cool, right? We haven't really seen that a lot. I kind of wish Ben Affleck's Batman was like that, but it is what it is. So what do you got here? So the problem with Dick as Batman is, sorry, Batman has always been the real Bruce. I'm not sure if it can work. Passing on the mantle does not always work for heroes. Um, you can't have Dick as Batman dealing with Joker because Joker knows that who Batman really is. Um, just to edit there. Yeah, I kind of get your point. Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, Aaron, I know you and Arkham have mixed feelings on that, on Dick being Batman. I think it's going to happen. I think eventually it's going to happen. It may even be that first movie, as Degrassi was saying. It does make sense. So yeah, we'll see. There's a lot of I don't even know who could direct this movie, right? Because I was thinking, I'm totally blanking on his name now. Totally blanking on his name, but he did Cabin in the Woods, and he was supposed to do Daredevil, the showrunner for Daredevil. Degrassi's gonna say his name in the comments. But yeah, I think he would make sense for a Batman movie, but again, I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm totally blanking on his name. I'm really bad at pronouncing people's names. I feel so guilty for saying that because I know it's such a shitty thing to say. But anyway, um, what do we have here? Then there's the general. The it's a team up. Yeah, that is true. Yes, it is a team up. Yeah, the name itself, Drew Goddard. Drew Goddard. Yes, that's who I'm talking about. Yeah, but the Brave and the Bold. I mean, even in the cartoon, that was a whole team up, right? Where it was characters constantly changing, and you get to see other DC characters, right? So Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? It's a James Bond team up kind of movie, right? We get, maybe the next movie it's him and Red Hood or another DC character, right? Like maybe we can get Batman and Superman, right? But it's a Batman focused movie. That would be interesting. So the next movie, Swamp Thing, didn't really have a lot of points on it. I just think it should be a standalone movie. Takes heavy inspiration from Alan Moore, his arc and dealing with Swamp Thing realizing he's not actually human, right? The existentialism of it all. I think that would be interesting for a horror movie, but I want it to be very kind of low budget in a sense. And I want it to be really about him and Abby's relationship, right? Like dealing I really don't want it to be so much like Alan Moore's comic, but I want it to be again heady and philosophical, but play on the horror elements, like this love affair and the weirdness of it all. Right? I had like the Fly meets Beauty and the Beast, right? But not so much like those movies, but just like conceptually. Um, Also, too, I'm not even really too sure. Like this is a movie I feel like it just should be standalone. Right? I don't even want like, oh, Constantine shows up as a cameo. I really don't want that, right? And again, if James Mangold directs it, it would be interesting. I mean, he hasn't made a horror movie yet, so I'm curious to see what he would do here. If he does get that job. But Swamp Thing as a character, again, even though this movie is standalone, he sort of will reappear, right? Green Arrow, I definitely want to see. I'm very like conflicted on. I'm not. I could see a movie happening because we already got a Green Arrow show, the CW shows. So again, I'm very conflicted on that because I'm like, I feel like a Green Arrow movie. I would kind of want to just see year one. Yes, that was Arrow, kind of the first season, the first two seasons, if you will. But I just feel like I like that comic, right? It was a cool comic. I'd be interested to see it. So and also I think making Green Arrow a little bit more grounded, a little bit more darker might appeal to people. But again, I know this is James Gunn's uh DCU, right? So I don't think we will get that. And we already kind of did get that already. So I don't know. I definitely do want to see Black Canary and Green Arrow though. No, no, definitely. What do we have here? If that's the case, make it where Grayson's Batman. It's only Batman for a limited time, and bring back Bruce's Batman for the sequel. And Dick Grayson can become Nightwing again. Yeah, you could do that. Um, I think to be honest, if you go down that route, you're going to have to make it a big sort of arc, right? Again, it's like I said, it's going to be controversial. I want to see it happen because I do like Dick Grayson as Batman. He's a different kind of Batman. We haven't seen that. So yeah. But as for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, again, just straight up adaptation of the comic, right? The red kryptonite at the ending, all of that stuff, right? She's more jaded. She's kind of the opposite of Superman. All the things that James Gunn said. Just adapt the comic straight up, right? That's all I ask. Doesn't need to tie into anything. Superman can make a cameo, right? I'm not expecting this to even be a trilogy, right? This could just be a standalone movie, right? Okay. The Brave and the Bold. Originally an entire theory. So yeah, I mean, I like I said, the movie being like that kind of makes sense. Um, and it only makes sense because of Reeves' his saga, right? So they're gonna have to obviously differentiate the two, and they also have to kind of keep a distance because I've seen like articles saying, oh, the Brave and the Bold would be in 2026, and I feel like that's just too close to the Matt Reeves movies. Like it might need to be like 2027, right? Unless it's like dramatically different, like visually speaking, right? That's the part that's gonna be like hard to nail is the visuals of that movie, right? Because the Reeves movies are very fantastical too, right? It's not grounded. It's not very realistic either, even though it is, right? It's sort of like a mixture of realistic and grounded with that universe. Tom King was CIA. Yep. Yeah, he was. As for Wonder Woman, as I was saying before, I think reboot Wonder Woman. That's my opinion. Reboot it, recast, cast a younger actress, and sort of just to be honest, I would say keep some elements of Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, her origin, how she fought in World War I, her time with Steve Trevor. I would maybe even change the war. Maybe it's World War II. Maybe it's um, a little bit earlier because I kind of want Steve Trevor to be around, but I want him to be an older character, right? This to me, the only problem I could see is people would compare this a lot to again Captain America, but I think it's a different relationship, right? He's older, she's younger, and their dynamic I think would be interesting. It's the in reverse of Peggy and Steve. So I would want to see that, right? I also think Cersei, I said Cersei. Um, not Cersei. Totally blanking on I am blanking on characters' names. Good lord. But just to forget about that because I'm blanking on it. Um, for I guess the war the I'm just so conflicted about Wonder Woman and what they should do because everybody kind of knows Wonder Woman is in this position where she has good storylines, but how do you adapt them for a movie? And what would be interesting to do with her character? Yeah, well, this is what I was trying to say. This character should be in um Paradise Lost, and you set her up, right? Because this is what I was thinking, right, with Wonder Woman. Forget some of the storylines. How did Wonder Woman get sort of reinvented in the comics? It was mixing her with more of the mythology, the Greek mythology, the gods and stuff. And sure, that does sound like Thor, but we didn't really get a lot of that in Thor. So I think if you have the Greek gods stay around, right? She doesn't kill Ares like in the first movie. Um, things like that, right? Where it's just straight up, we're dealing with the Greek mythology, we're dealing with the civil war on Themyscira and the different Amazons. Um, that you could do something like something that lasts a lot longer, right? It can go on. It could be its own mini story, right? And you can introduce so many characters in that world, right? All the like Dinah Troy, um, so many other characters you can introduce, and then you could kind of do the War of the God storyline, right? Where maybe you can have like team ups. They show up, they fight the other various gods, right? The Egyptian gods, the Greek gods, things like that, right? And so I would say that this movie obviously would tie into Paradise Lost, right? But yeah, I'm still a little bit shaky. Like my notes here were kind of like, to be honest, I don't really know what to do with Wonder Woman besides setting up the War of the Gods storyline, right? I kind of missed Arkham's comment. Sorry about that. I have a question. If Dick Grayson is Batman, though, throughout this universe without that limited one family, yeah, like Stephanie Brown, not so much. Cassandra, Jason, like they're characters that I would say they're um they show up eventually. They're just not going to show up in the first movie. Again, it's just like too crowded. You need to like establish them slowly. Like draw it out. You can get Kratos. Yeah, I would kind of say it's like Wonder Woman, but with God of War. That's like my idea, really, because again, you put the character in a situation where it it would be very similar to Kratos, where it's like she is a warrior, but she's really not a warrior, right? She's supposed to bring compassion and love, and how do you balance that, right? Those two things are so dramatically different, and I think that was the problem with the two other Wonder Woman movies, right? Is like how do you balance that? Because it kind of works sometimes, but it kind of doesn't, and so you need a good frame of reference. And James Gunn should say, play the newest God of War movie. That should be similar to Wonder Woman, right? Except, Wonder Woman doesn't have a kid, but you get my point. The whole compassion and sort of like forgiveness and being a warrior. And I think that's a good comparison, right? Uh yes, I agree, George. There's no doubt in my mind. Gal Gadot is I've always said, like, I do not like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think she's not the greatest actress. And I don't really think I feel like any other actress could have played the role and we still would have loved the first movie, right? What we have here. I gotta move my screen because my window is so tiny because I have my notes up. So I'm just gonna move this so that I can see Degrassi's comment. All the gods and monsters will be treated very matter of fact in the DCU. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that was kind of what I was saying in the beginning, right? Where it's kind of like it to me, it felt like a play on words. It's like gods and monsters, so it's like another way of saying heroes and villains, but it's also not because you are dealing with gods and monsters. So yeah, maybe at the end of the series, I think they're gonna go the route of she's made of clay, and we might see that at the end of the series. But I also think it might be a mini series, right? I don't think this is gonna go on very long. Do you agree? Would you want Wonder Woman to look like she does in the Suicide Squad game and make her like that in the DCU? Yeah, I would agree. She looks. I mean, the thing is, Wonder Woman is sort of Mediterranean, which Gal Gadot is technically. So, um, I wouldn't mind someone who's a little bit more um tan, I guess, a little bit more. I mean, she's supposed to be Greek, right? But she could kind of look like a mix of Greek and Middle Eastern, right? Gal Gadot really to me looks more white, right? Obviously she's Israeli, right? So um but like if someone was like from Palestine, for example, they could easily be Wonder Woman. Like I don't think that really breaks anything. It would kind of make sense, right? That region of the world, right? I would pick that's how Wonder Woman should look like, the Mediterranean. Um So yeah, I agree, Arkham. As for the Flash movie, this is a movie that is gonna be hard if you do a sequel, right? And I only have the four main characters: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash. I'm really not interested in seeing a Aquaman 3, if you will. Um, I don't really think his storylines really lend well to movies. And I also feel like it's kind of a waste, right? You could give that to another character, a more obscure character that's more low budget and focus on them, establish them. We've seen Aquaman. We're gonna get two movies. And if Jason Momoa is still Aquaman, or you get a new Aquaman, well, there's if you want to do if a series, I don't know, within the next 5 years of Aquaman comes up, right? I know there's a new DC Black comic, and you're like, oh, that might be a great idea to adapt, I guess, right? Yeah, that would be. I would definitely want to see that. It'd be interesting. But yeah, the Flash movie, as I was saying, the Flash movie is. I like. What I'm curious to see everybody in the chat. What would you actually want to see with a Flash movie? Right, because I do want to see Jay Garrick. I would even like to see the idea of Earth 2 coming into play, and but then I also am like, well, isn't that very similar to what we're already getting with the first Flash movie? So I'm very conflicted. I feel like I want to see more time travel or multiverse traveling, and that's going to just be Flash's thing, right? So because we got the Flash TV show, right? And it lasts for almost like a 10 years, right? So it's like, would people really get bored of just seeing standard Flash rogue villains, right? His rogue gallery, right? Captain Boomerang and all these other characters, right? Grodd. I'm very conflicted. I'm like, I don't know what you could do with a Flash movie because I feel like if you're going to make a movie, it needs to be different. It needs to be something new and fresh. That's my perspective. So I Jay Garrick would be. I mean, he was in the Flash TV show, right? I didn't watch that series a lot, but I know he was in it. So I'm conflicted. I want to see Earth 2. That's my big thing. Um, Not if Batman at the end of The Flash is Thomas Wayne. Hmm. I'm hmm. Not sure about that. Grodd would I definitely think he's gonna appear at some point in time. I mean, James Gunn. I mean, there's a whole joke about gorillas in comics, right? James Gunn is obviously. I mean, he did that with Peacemaker, so it kind of makes sense. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna have to speed some through this because I'm looking at the time. Good lord, it was almost like an hour long. I've just sat down. I didn't even get to a lot of the other things, so I'm just gonna have to skip through and just I wrote so many notes on like just things I want to see, right? I even put Hourman, right? Random idea, but they were talking about this movie for so long, right? But as for the Suicide Squad, I kind of already mentioned it. I want to see Suicide Squad versus Checkmate. Um, the it just makes sense. I mean, it was in the comics. I think it's interesting to have that agency war between the two teams, I should say. But I kind of want it to be again, if Peacemaker 2 comes back, I kind of want it to be an arc where Peacemaker realizes that he has to take up Rick Flag's mantle and be the leader of the Suicide Squad. I think that would be an interesting arc for the character, right? Where he's like, oh, now I have to lead the Suicide Squad, but yet Bloodsport hates Peacemaker, obviously because of the ending, right? So I, I think that would actually make sense for a season two, and in a movie you deal with the ramifications of that first movie, right? You kind of did. You obviously made Peacemaker more of a relatable character. We actually like him, which I think was probably one of the best arcs in a comic book movie or series. Is to have Peacemaker go from a scumbag villain, right, who literally flips at the ending to a relatable character who you start to understand the decision that he made at the ending of that movie. Um, and the Suicide Squad I think should be very similar to the last movie, but again, the stakes would be higher, right? So you have Bloodsport, you have Harley, Ratcatcher 2, King Shark. I would even throw a Vigilante in there, but obviously someone's got to die. So now you have all these characters that everybody likes, and they're gonna eventually die, right? Um, so yeah, I'm sure James Gunn is gonna figure out. He's probably gonna do this movie, I would assume, the Suicide Squad. I mean, just to wrap it up, or maybe oversee it because I the characters in that pocket of the DCU universe is interesting. So I kind of already mentioned the Justice League movie. I would just call it Justice League Kingdom Come. I definitely want to see them sort of loosely adapt that storyline. It kind of makes sense with the Authority as I previously established. Um, for who's on the Justice League, um, because I feel like this would come at the ending of Chapter One. That it should be a lot more. As I said, I feel like they should be more of a UN who are superheroes, right? So there's a lot more than just 7 members, but the characters that we follow are maybe only 7 or 6, right? And I was conflicted too who should be those 7 or 6 characters, right? Obviously Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. And I was like, well, should we have John Stewart or should we have Hal Jordan? Should Aquaman be on the team? Should we have Hawk Girl? Should we have Martian Manhunter? Right. I think those are the characters you should play with as being the established 7 characters that we follow. And then you have, all the other characters as council members, right? They're part of the Justice League, but they're sort of there for aid and part of the discussion, right? And I want that dynamic again, very kind of political in a sense, where they're, at some points they have to sit down and talk some of this through, like what they're going to do. And there's obviously going to be disagreements, different perspectives. That's what I want to see with the Justice League, right? Very different to the Avengers. It's got to be different to the Avengers. That's my only like thing about this movie. I don't want it to be DC's Avengers. We need to get away from that because I feel like that's what Snyder did, or even Joss Whedon did. Was just like, oh, it's DC's Avengers. No, come up with something different, a different dynamic, a different pitch. Um, yeah, yeah, you have multiple leagues, right? And they're all different. Yeah, you could easily do Justice League International, right? That's why I was saying, hey, you have Hourman, You have I have Animal Man, right? Introduce some of these other lesser known characters, you could spin them off and they become their own Justice League. And then you have the main Justice League who upfronts the movies, right? Um so yeah, as for the TV shows, Waller I feel like is going to deal with what happens at the ending of Peacemaker 1. I feel like it should also set up Checkmate and maybe even other agency teams that she has, right? Kind of deeper dive into her character and show, oh, she's like got her fingers and all these different things, right? I also wouldn't mind if Peacemaker and Waller set up um Captain I was gonna say Captain. Is it Captain? Hold on. I'm totally blanking. Hold on. There's another blank. This happens all the time. This happens when it's gonna be a solo stream. I just blank on names. Um just to make sure. Okay. Yeah, Captain Adam. I don't know why I was like blanking on the character. I was like, I put Adam, and I was like, wait a minute. I meant Captain Adam. So I kind of want to see this character. I feel like it kind of makes sense. Like, he's a Charlton Comics character. So is Peacemaker. So is Blue Beetle. So I kind of want to see more of these characters, right? I want to see the Question, right? Of course, I feel like the Question needs to appear at some point in time. I didn't put him into this chapter 1. I don't think he should appear. I think it's a later thing you can add on. Um, but yeah, I would definitely have both of these shows sort of set up Captain Adam, his creation, and sort of how it's like like it's a secret pop project, sort of like a secret weapon that is being developed, right? And he sort of kind of comes into the Suicide Squad movie, right? He's sort of the last resorts. I don't know. That was the idea I had. Who knows, right? These are just random ideas that I had. Just throw them against the wall. This character could appear here. It kind of makes sense. I don't know. Peacemaker season 2. Again, I feel like what I was saying before is just establishes arc. That's really it. Just that established that leader arc that he eventually is going to have. Because we didn't really get that in uh the uh the first season, right? He obviously dealt with the trauma of killing Rick Flag, but now I want to see him deal with Bloodsport, right? Because he wronged Bloodsport at the end of the movie, so it kind of makes sense to deal with them. Lanterns is the one I kind of wrote. I kind of want them the mystery that is being established to deal with the Anti-Monitor. And this is what I was saying. I don't want Darkseid to be the main big bad. I want it to be the Anti-Monitor. And so the sort of the mystery that James Gunn was hinting at, I would want it to see like, hey, I was gonna say the Justice League. I meant the Green Lanterns, right? The duo, right? Hal Jordan and John Stewart. They actually find that the universe is almost folding in on itself, and they're sort of like, well, what the heck's going on here, right? Without realizing the Anti-Monitor is sort of going through all these universes and killing it, right? And so I don't want. I want again. I want the show to have multiple seasons, right? I could see that. I could see that happening. I did put Doctor Manhattan in. I made James Gunn look like Doctor Manhattan, um, which is weird because that's not in my notes. I just put that there because of the whole storyline, right? He's the one that created the DC universe in Rebirth, right? For what was that comic? Oh my god, the Jeff Johns comic. I'm bad. I'm bad. Yeah, this is why I have notes, is so I can write down, and then I still have just like ideas, points, like one by one. You should see my notes. It's all just like I wrote a lot. It was like 6 pages. It's insane. Um, but yeah, just and that's because I really like this stuff, and I have a lot of ideas. Obviously, they're not going to happen. I'm only doing this for fun, but I also think it's a cool exercise of like, oh, we could take this comic or take this premise idea. So yeah. But yeah, I want to see the Anti-Monitor, right? It doesn't have to be like the comic, no. But I think you could do something interesting that is not, because like I could see again talking about Marvel, they just turn the Anti-Monitor into this. Oh, he's kind of like creating incursions and stuff like that, like for Marvel. I don't really want that. I want it to be almost like, um, which is weird, right? But I kind of want it to be almost like this natural thing that's happening. And so that's where the mystery comes in. And it's like slowly revealed. Like this is the back burner story because this is going to play into several chapters of characters learning about the anti-monitor and what he's doing and such. But I kind of want the Lantern show at first to be about the two Earth One graphic novels, um, which I don't even remember who wrote those comics or the graphic novels, I should say. But they're very different. They're not, they're a lot more grounded, right? Hal Jordan's kind of like this astronaut. He's kind of working on the moon and such. I mean, it's different. I think also too changes should be made, right? I'm always for keeping keeping the source material and just like adapting it straight up, but sometimes I'm starting to realize you can't always do that, right? It's sort of like a 50-50. You got to sort of take what you will, what works, what doesn't work, and mold it for, television and movies and such. So yeah, I'm sort of, the so many other projects I had that I wrote down, right? Because I wanna I'm going on way too long. Let's see. Okay, we got an hour, which was my goal. That was my goal. But yeah, Paradise Lost, Booster Gold, Creature Commando, Animal Man. I might even come back and revisit this topic again, just because again I had all these notes. But I sort of said what I wanted to say a lot about these things, right? A Nightwing series I think would work. Anthology with Constantine and establishing, other characters like Deadman and Zatanna, the Spectrum, uh, eh, right? Or Spectre, I should say. Again, messing up names. I was even saying you can even do the JSA, right? Have them reintroduced, but as like an animated series, right? But it just has Doctor Fate and Hawkman, and maybe you could throw in another character. Maybe it could also be kind of like that animated movie that recently came out, which I still need to see. So that's really gonna be it. I did want to talk about Suicide Squad. I'm not sure if Aaron, sorry, not Aaron. Me and Arkham were talking about this because there's so much controversy around that game. Um, I might do an episode dedicated to when that game does come out. Um, I have to play it first, obviously. So, but yeah, um, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. It's been an hour of me just talking straight, and it's gonna sound like gobbledygook. And I also have to put the chapter times um and this last chapter time is gonna be really confusing. This last ten minutes, I guess, because I kind of skipped over some of this stuff, but that's okay. I talked about what I wanted to talk about, what I had to say. Um, am I excited about this? Is another thing. I'll end it off here. Am I super excited about this? I'm in the middle. I think this could be a total disaster. Just because if James Gunn isn't picking characters that are super popular, right? And I mean like characters that deserve to have a movie, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, right? But once you do those characters and they get a trilogy, James Gunn has to make sure that the lesser known characters now become on par or slightly on par with those bigger characters, right? Sort of like a Guardians of the Galaxy situation, which I mean he's done before, but can he do it repeatedly, one after the other? That's the thing that I'm very skeptical about is how are fans going to perceive this? How is the general audience going to perceive this? I know James Gunn has talked about even in depth about how he doesn't want superhero stories to just be, oh, the ending of the movie, there's this giant blue, sky beam that the heroes have to destroy, right? It needs to be a lot more complex. And when I heard him say that, I definitely was a lot more excited, right? Because it meant that the morals of these characters are going to be they're going to stay intact and they're going to play with it, right? And it's not just going to be bad guys versus the heroes. It's going to be a lot more complex because now we like some of these villains too, right? That's something Marvel is not doing, right? They're not doing something like Suicide Squad, right? So I want more of that. I want villains to get their own movies as well, right? Um which I didn't even really have a lot of villains here, but I did have, the House of Horror and Swamp Thing, and I'm a little bit confused on what you could do with Constantine, like if that would conflict with, the Keanu Reeves Constantine sequel. So, I mean, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of weird characters, a lot of good stories. I mean, I don't know every single story. Obviously, I'm a fan of this stuff, but I'm still like diving deep into it and just reading things that I should have read a long time ago. But it is what it is, right? So, um, but yeah, that's gonna end the stream here. I do have a project that will be a video that I'm working on, which is gonna be how to fix Ant-Man. So that's gonna be a scripted video, edited. It's gonna take some time because I have to write the script and then I have to, edit all of it. And I wanted to be professional, right? I wanted to be, or not professional per se, but like sort of not just me talking, right? You're not going to just see my icon talking, right? And even in future episodes, I might have visuals up on the screen. So I do apologize if there are some people watching, because there's not a lot of visuals, but this is a podcast, right? That's the whole thing is I'm just going to sit and talk with people, and feel free to reach out if you want to be on, right? If you're listening, I'm on Twitter. You could DM me. And obviously the people who are in the chat, everybody knows me: Degrassi, George, Arkham, Aaron. Um, you guys, we talk on a regular basis. You guys are welcome to come on. So yeah, so stay tuned until next Sunday at the same time, where you can hear me stuttering again and stumbling all over my words and forgetting characters' names. That's what this podcast is now. So yeah. So peace, guys.